Slowly but surely, a completely different, overwhelming component came into play for me. It became increasingly metaphysical, if you know what I mean. Once our eyes met more than 30 meters away in the daycare's playground, and at the same time, I had the subjective feeling that a ray of energy emerges from the middle of my forehead, from my third eye, and meets with a ray of energy from her forehead halfway, almost as if there was a special connection between us. Since I've been dealing intensively with spirituality and extrasensory perception for more than 20 years, it became more and more clear to me from day to day that something very special was happening here. I had had a similar experience back in the 90s when my Aunt Lily passed away. At that time, I was still living at home with my parents and I was doing my community service in the emergency clinic in the north of my hometown. Back then, it was simply considered good manners to regularly smoke weed as a community service worker. In order not to lose my reputation as a civil servant loyal to the state, one night I stood in the window of my youth room and smoked a pipe of hash. It was around midnight, and from my position I could see across the courtyard of our house from the first floor into the ground floor living room window of the house opposite. That's where my aunt lived. I saw light shimmering through the cracks in the shutters. At the same time, for the first time, I felt this beam of energy emanating from my forehead and meeting in the middle of the courtyard with a beam of energy that seemed to be coming out of my aunt's living room window. In that moment, I knew immediately that she had died. I went to bed in shock and wondered if I should inform my parents. But unfortunately, I was totally stoned. What if I just imagined it? Back then, you were only allowed to smoke weed in secret. It took about a quarter of an hour until our doorbell rang. Mikey, my aunt's neighbor, answered the intercom. I said, before she could continue, "It's because of Aunt Lily she's dead, isn't she?" Mikey was amazed because I was right. I opened the door for her. Mikey turned pale. One of the most dramatic experiences of my life was the death of my girlfriend 2 years before my aunt's death. I've known Catherine since day one in the kindergarten, and we went to the same elementary school and high school. We listened to the same music, later went to the same nightclub and smoked the same shit. Then came a week in high school during the preparation for the German Abitur. We often walked arm in arm. I was asked by a friend on Tuesday if we were together. We had an appointment on Saturday. I felt so happy, but she died in a car accident earlier Thursday night. Something like that pulls your legs off. In the 10 years that followed, I didn't realize at all that I wasn't capable of having a relationship, though I thought I was. Other people go to university in their mid-20s and start a family, but me, I was so done. I was no longer interested in material things. I needed answers. The Christian church just turned me off. I found inspiration at the regular meetings of the Oriental Templars north of my city. An Ordo Templi Orientis oasis was located there. There I made contacts, took part in Gnostic masses and received valuable books tips. At last, the intelligentsia of the planet had graced me with their presence. You don't find that on a pew. Above all, one does not find it kneeling, just upright with your head. My contact with the OTO took place around 1995. At that time, you still had to stock up on books if you wanted to find out more about certain topics. I devoured books on shamanism, magic, and Eastern religion. In the years that followed, I experimented with meditation, psilocybin, LSD, and of course pot. Despite being on the warpath with the education system, I took university courses in philosophy and quantum mechanics. I sang in a rock band, became a perfect didgeridoo player, gave courses in breathing and relaxation techniques with the didgeridoo at the Adult Education Center, wrote 2 books under a false name, and thus laid the foundation for a German-wide underground movement that had set itself the task of helping the population, bombarding her with confusing leaflets until she was forced to enlighten herself. Doubtful if this ever worked at all.